Navigating Class B airspace can be intimidating for many pilots, and it's easy to see why. It surrounds the nation's busiest airport where you'll fly alongside speedy jets and communicate with rapid-fire controllers. But with the right preparation and knowledge, flying in the Bravo can be an exciting challenge. So in this video, we'll cover everything you need to know about Class B airspace, including rules, requirements, and how to make those dreaded radio calls. And at the end, we'll go through how you can avoid the Bravo without flying around it. Hi, I'm Greg from Pilot Institute, the online ground school that makes aviation easy. So first, what is this airspace? Well, there's never a slow day at a Class B airport. Think of LA International, New York's JFK. These airports always have a steady stream of airliners queued up for departure and arrival. Of course, the airspace isn't just busy, it's big. Really big. The horizontal boundaries can extend 30 nautical miles from the airport. The vertical boundaries, or the ceiling, typically reach 10,000 feet above sea level, although some exceptions exist. If you look at it in 3 dimensions, you can see that it's not just one big cylinder like Class Delta, for example. Instead, it's designed in layers, very much like an upside-down wedding cake. The central core covers the primary airport and extends from the surface all the way to the ceiling. 2 or more additional layers, or shelves, cover arrival and departure routes. As we move outward from the airport, each shelf's base altitude, or floor, increases. There's really no standard Class B design. Each one is tailor-made to meet the needs of the airport and the surrounding areas. Some have simple concentric circles, while others, like San Francisco, have way more complex designs. Thankfully, FAA charts show us everything we need to know about the dimension. Let's take a look. This is the Terminal Area Chart, or TAC, for Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Each Class B airport has a TAC which provides more detail than the sectional chart. Now, the boundary of the airport is depicted as a solid blue line. Inside the central core, we see something that looks like a strange fraction with 100 on the top and SFC at the bottom. But it's not a fraction at all. These labels represent the floor and the ceiling of the airspace segment. Numbers represent hundreds of feet above mean sea level, and SFC means surface. So the core extends from the surface to 10,000 feet MSL. Now, if we travel outwards from the center, we see different shapes, each with its own floor and its own ceiling. Notice that the further we get from the primary airport, the higher the base is. These shelves make up the tiers of the upside-down wedding cake. Occasionally, you'll see a plus sign preceding the lower number. This means the airspace floor starts above the altitude shown on the chart. You may also have noticed this magenta circle. It is the edge of the Mode C Veil, a 30 nautical mile area around the airport. All aircraft inside must have an operating Mode C transponder and ADS-B out equipment. For more information, check out this video right here. So now that you know what Class B looks like, what do you need to enter it? Well, we can divide the requirements into 3 different categories: equipment, pilot, and VFR weather. Let's start with equipment. Quiz time. What is required inside the Mode C Veil? A Mode C transponder and ADS-B out, private pilot certificate, Mode C transponder, or ATC clearance? Well, if you said C, you'd be wrong, because the answer is A. You need a Mode C transponder and ADS-B out. But what exactly do they do? Well, the Mode C transponder reports aircraft altitude and location, as well as a unique number known as a squawk code. ADS-B out broadcasts GPS position, speed, and other data to ATC and nearby traffic. Aircraft must also have two-way radios, and VFR traffic must receive clearance before entering the Bravo. IFR aircraft also have an extra requirement. They must have a VOR receiver or an RNAV system such as GPS. Next, pilot requirements. If you hold at least a private pilot certificate, you can legally take off and land at any Class B airport. If you hold a student, recreational, or sport pilot certificate, there are some things that you'll need to do before you can fly in the Bravo. It typically includes logging ground and flight training, but also receiving an instructor endorsement for the specific airport that you want to fly into. Make sure to check out this article for more details. But there's a catch. 12 Class B airports are so busy that they require at least a private pilot certificate. The controllers simply cannot afford to give student, sport, or recreational pilots the necessary attention to ensure safety. And finally, we have VFR weather minimums. To fly VFR in Class B airspace, you must have at least 3 statute mile of visibility, and remain clear of clouds. There are no minimum cloud distance, so you can legally fly as close to the clouds as you want, as long as you don't enter it. Now, you might be wondering why the weather minimums are less restrictive than any other airspace classes. Well, since ATC tracks traffic so closely, you don't have to be as careful of IFR traffic popping out of the clouds. But this doesn't mean that you can scud rud under low clouds. Class B airports halt VFR operation when the ceiling is less than 1,000 feet. Your only options are to file IFR or request a special VFR clearance. But 33 out of the 37 Class B airports in the US prohibit special VFR operation, making such operation extremely rare. Those airports have no SVFR marked on the chart. Okay, now let's talk about how to enter the Bravo step by step. First, you must ensure that you know the specifics of the airports you're flying into. Make sure to familiarize yourself with the airspace dimension and which airport control sector you'll need to contact for your planned route. Now, study the airport diagram and brief possible taxi routes. Sometimes the most complicated part of flying into a Class B airport is taxiing to the FBO. When planning your flight, call the tower at your destination and ask them for the best time to arrive. Bravo airspace is almost always busy, but it can be particularly chaotic at certain times of the day. This is called a push, and ATC is very likely to refuse VFR Bravo clearance during that time. At really busy Class B airport, you may have to arrive late at night or early in the morning. Okay, so you've done your homework and you're on your way to your destination in your trusty 172. Before you call up approach control, pick up the ATIS about 50 miles out. This will contain the weather, the altimeter setting, arrival and departure runways, and anything else that ATC wants you to know. Make sure that you write it down. When you're about 40 miles out, it's time to call up approach control. If you don't have VFR flight following, this will be a cold call. Don't give them too much information at once since they won't be expecting you. For example, Pittsburgh approach, Skyhawk November 647 Delta Sierra. This will let them know that you have a request. Pittsburgh approach will respond with
Skyhawk 647 Delta Sierra, Pittsburgh approach.
This lets you know that they're ready for your request. Now tell them where you are and what you'd like to do. Skyhawk 647 Delta Sierra, 40 miles northwest of Pittsburgh, 7,500 with information alpha. Request VFR flight following into Pittsburgh PIT. Approach will give you a squawk code so they can identify you on the radar.
Skyhawk 7 Delta Sierra, Roger, squawk 0432.
Acknowledge the code with a simple squawk 0432 Skyhawk 7 Delta Sierra. Once approach locates you on the radar screen, they will give you further instruction.
Skyhawk 7 Delta Sierra, radar contact. Turn right heading 100 and descend and maintain 5,000. Altimeter 2984.
Let them know you received the instruction. Right heading 100, descend and maintain 5,000, altimeter 2984, 7 Delta Sierra. Remember, you are not cleared into the airspace at this point. Until you hear the words cleared into the Bravo, you must stay away. ATC will usually clear you in without you asking, but if you start to get close to the airspace boundary, give them a reminder. Pittsburgh approach, 7 Delta Sierra, request clearance into the Bravo.
7 Delta Sierra, you are cleared into the Bravo. Turn right heading 160.
Right heading 160 and cleared into the Bravo, 7 Delta Sierra. Okay, now you're cleared in. So let's talk about what to expect once you're inside. ATC will provide specific heading, altitude, and speed instructions. They expect you to follow them very carefully. Controllers are required to separate all traffic, and any deviations from the instructions can result in aircraft getting too close for comfort. The closer you get to the airport, the busier the radio transmissions will be. You'll need to pay strict attention, listen for your call sign, and respond to the instructions promptly. If you're not sure about a specific instruction, ask the controller for clarification. It's your responsibility to maintain situational awareness and follow all the rules. Speaking of rules, there are speed limits inside and under Class Bravo. Since most Class Bravo airspace is below 10,000 feet, aircraft must fly 250 knots or less. And if you're flying under a Bravo shelf and through a VFR corridor, the speed limit is 200 knots. Now we'll talk about VFR corridors a little bit later. As you get vectored to the airport, you'll likely be passed off to several different approach controllers. Eventually, you'll be handed off to the tower controller who will be clearing you to land. Expect to keep your speed up during the approach. This will allow the controller to sequence you between faster airline traffic. A faster no-flap landing will make controllers happy, but make sure that you practice them beforehand. Don't forget, as PIC, you're the final authority on the safe operation of your airplane. Don't feel pressure to fly it outside of your limits. As you near the runway, be aware of possible wake turbulence from large airplanes that are landing ahead of you or on a parallel runway. As you roll out, keep your airport diagram handy. The tower controller will expect you to vacate the runway quickly before passing you off to the ground controller, so put the ground frequency on standby. Since you've already familiarized yourself with the possible taxiway route, you'll be prepared for whatever path the ground controller is going to give you. Taxi to the FBO, shut down the aircraft, and now it's time to treat yourself to a drink and a snack in the lounge. You've definitely earned it. Once you're ready to depart again, get a pre-flight briefing. Grab the ATIS and call up clearance delivery. Just like with the approach controller, tell them who you are and what you'd like to do. Pittsburgh clearance, Skyhawk November 647 Delta Sierra, with information Juliet, VFR to Springfield, SPI 7500. Once clearance delivery has coordinated your flight, they will come back with a clearance. Now make sure that you copy it down using the CRAFT technique. Clearance limit, route of flight, altitude, departure frequency, and transponder squawk code.
Skyhawk 647 Delta Sierra, Pittsburgh clearance. Cleared inside the Bravo. Maintain VFR at or below 2,000 feet. Departure frequency 125.275, squawk 4121.
Read your clearance back and switch over to ground for taxi instructions. The ground controller will be expecting you, so there's no need for cold call in this case. Pittsburgh ground, Skyhawk 647 Delta Sierra, at Atlantic Aviation, ready for taxi. The controller will then issue taxi instructions. Make sure that you have a scratch pad and airport diagram at the ready.
Skyhawk 647 Delta Sierra, Pittsburgh ground. Runway 28 right, taxi via November, Bravo, Bravo 1.
Read back what you wrote down. If the readback is correct, you can start taxiing. When you're ready for departure, contact the tower and let them know. After takeoff, they'll hand you off to the departure controller, who will then help you to exit the Bravo. Now, what if Class Bravo airspace lies between you and your destination? You could fly around it, but there are better and faster ways to get past the massive airspace. Here are 4 techniques for bypassing the Bravo without a huge detour. The simplest way is to just fly under the shelf. You don't need a clearance since you're not entering the Bravo, but you will need to have a Mode C transponder and ADS-B out. You will also have to keep your speed below 200 knots. Easy enough if you're in a 172. The only snag is that the airspace below can be very busy. Watch for traffic and consider getting flight following. And don't fly too close to the airspace boundary. You don't want to enter the Bravo by accident without having clearance. We suggest a 500-foot vertical and a 3 nautical mile lateral margin from the airport boundary. The buffer also keeps you safe from any other aircraft that are inside the Bravo that might inadvertently descend below the floor. Flying your own route under the Bravo isn't the only option. VFR Flightways are suggesting routes for skirting the Bravo airspace. You'll find them on VFR Flightway charts that are included in the airport's TAC. These routes are shown with blue arrows along with recommended altitudes. They include notable landmarks and obstructions to help you navigate. You'll also find common IFR routes, so you'll know where to expect fast-moving traffic. Now, VFR Flightways don't require a clearance, but you will need to contact any Class C or Class D controllers if you cross their airspace en route. Or just get VFR flight following. Some Class B airspace feature a route right through the middle for VFR traffic called a VFR corridor. You can fly through these halls within the airspace without any clearance. The downside is that they are small and often heavily congested. Here you can see San Diego's VFR corridor depicted as a dashed red line. Red arrows show the direction of travel, and the chart explains what altitude to fly and how to report aircraft position to other pilots. Some Bravo airports have traffic volumes that are too high for a VFR corridor to handle. The FAA developed VFR transition routes for these locations. Now, unlike the method we just covered, VFR transition routes require Bravo clearance before entry. They're represented on the terminal area chart with red double-sided arrows and often have their own names. Here we see the mini route at LAX. The course is predefined, but ATC will assign altitudes. Just call up approach and let them know which transition you'd like to fly. It's that simple. You have to be on your A game in Bravo airspace. So if you feel like rusty radio skills might be holding you back, check out this video to learn tips for talking to ATC. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.